Welcome back, everybody. We are back with another Working Brother Talks. This time we've got Tim Kirby on from Russia. Hardcore or not hardcore? Sometimes it's Tim Kirby Russia hardcore. Sometimes
well, according
it's
to
not.
Telegram, it's always hardcore, but my Telegram, Tim Kirby hardcore. But yeah, that kind of arose because I wanted to kind of maybe make. I have a problem. I'm a very chaotic, in some ways, kind of a thinker, and I thought people would get too turned off by the fact that sometimes I like some jokes, I like some memes, but I also like some serious information. And I kind of wanted to have two Telegram channels, one about serious stuff and one about goofy stuff, but it just all wound up being thrown into one anyways. So that's where the hardcore comes from.
Okay. So that was supposed to be like, let's say, a different direction, but then it all turned into one, basically.
Yeah, I'll put it this way: there's this idea amongst a lot of people in Russia that because you're really interesting at speaking, or because you write a nice piece of political analysis, that also means that somehow you're going to sit down and be able to be some sort of SMM god. And that's different. Promotion and marketing and SMM and all that are different. I like making a nice
S&M, you don't mean the
about,
sadomaso kind. You don't mean the sadomaso kind. You mean some
No. That's a BDSM. I mean, SMN is in social media management. What even marketing management?
Maybe.
I think social media management.
I don't know.
I don't even remember.
So it could be.
Well, but in Russian they're called SMMshiki, which is fun. And basically the art of taking people's content and actually making it sort of into nice posts and getting people to interact with those posts and stuff. And guess what? I hate that stuff. I hate it more than words can say. I just don't. I feel it's very feminine feeling, because it's not that you're projecting some sort of idea or creating something. You're just sort of babbling and gossiping about stuff. I don't like it. It's not for me. So
for the people who don't know already, you can find Tim on YouTube sometimes, most of the time. Sometimes he gets banned and put in the naughty corner.
And speaking of banned, I think this is my old YouTube channel, which is now forever blocked. So as you see, that last video, there was a sort of not recent upload. So I believe the new channel is called Tim Kirby Russia Reloaded or something. I don't even remember what I called it. But if you find it, this one I think also used to have over 10,000 subscribers. So the new YouTube channel is different. However, if you want to see everything,
I'll have to look for the other one.
Everything called Tim Kirby Russia, be it on YouTube or as you mean on Rumble and BitChute, on those two have not been blocked or banned. So you get all the videos from the very beginning of when I decided to start doing this.
And there's also this other channel, Russia Tips, Tricks, and Travel.
Correct. Unfortunately, Rumble does not have the best audience, so we don't have a lot of subscribers. The Russian translation of this, though, does have 20,000 subscribers. So the Russian translation is more successful than the actual project is. So, but this was funded by RT, which means it got banned as soon as the war started, but not on Rumble.
Wait, so is the green color in your background to an homage to RT, or?
Oh no!
No, because you just said it. I know, I'm joking. Because you just said it, and the green is awfully close to the
yes,
RT
I am
green.
in the middle of basically a green rectangle, which is very RT inspired. But it's just because I have absolutely nothing. I'm on the
Russian propaganda. Everybody on this channel knows and is used to the fact that all of our guests have Russian propaganda, and all that we promote is Russian propaganda. Even if it's truth, even if it's books from 200 years ago that talk about academic theories.
Well, yeah, dude, you know who I really respect is Earl Grey, because he literally has foreign agent written as his icon. So
he owned the label of foreign agent. Yeah. It's become a part of him. Tell our subscribers and or viewers, by the way, share, subscribe. Let's see if we can get this prompt. There we go. There's the prompt. So share, and subscribe, and tell people where they can find you, other than what we just mentioned, including Telegram, and also tell us why they should find you. In the sense, if I'm not mistaken, you've been there for 8 years, 9 years now.
Maybe longer? No, 15 or more, man. I've been here since the end of 2006. Yeah, so essentially, like, who the hell am I? I am a guy who's lived in Russia since the end of 2006. Even before that, I served in the U.S. Peace Corps in Kazakhstan for 2 years. So, former State Department employee talking to you. Oh boy. But anyways, over that time, I kind of became a YouTube celebrity in Russia, and then I started working in more like the politics and analysis stuff. I worked in the computer video game industry, kind of when I first got here, and I did the morning zoo on the radio for a bunch of years as like the funny foreign guy.
Wait,
It's kind of
what
cool.
did you do in the game industry? I didn't know you were in the game industry. That's
Yeah, it
always
was
fun.
for a few years. I enjoyed it. I didn't really so much enjoy the salary. I don't know. I just maybe didn't have the talent, or because I was a foreign person, I kind of got passed up for a lot of promotions. So I kind of got stuck being just a designer. But overall, I did a lot of the interfaces. This was back
Mm-hmm.
before sort of like the whole iPhone revolution. I mean, or kind of during it. So
Mm-hmm.
basically, I did a lot of interfaces, especially for browser-based games, and like the earliest like iPhone, smartphone games, like the first generation, that kind of stuff.
We've got some videos of Tim's going on in the background.
Mhm.
He has gone around Russia and really seen a lot of the country, and like I've been in awe of you like for many years back of
Oh,
how
thanks.
lucky you are to have traveled Russia. Like I've
Yeah.
always wanted to like get a caravan or whatnot or a mobile home,
Mhm.
as they say, and drive around Russia because you'd have like 15 years of driving to do, basically to see it all.
Well, yeah, there's a
So
lot to
like,
see. Especially, so this is sort of my main bread and butter in life. Was this project was initially financed by RT, but when the special military operation happened, everything that RT happened got blocked. So what they did is they just gave me the rights to it, so I own it now. Haha, which is nice. Kind of a weird present, but anyways, this project here has been really cool, and it is also very important that for someone who talks a lot about politics, especially publicly, there's always this sort of like default argument that Russian people make. Well, you only live in Moscow, so everything in Russia looks like it's no, I've seen more of Russia than 97% of the Russian population has. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Also, really, I could just slap that first argument down about how I don't know what's happening in the rest of the country. I know very much what's happening in the rest of the country from a sort of ground eye view. And Russia is a good country to visit if you like more of the sort of like adventurous type of vacation holiday experience where you're going out in the woods or going up in the mountains, or you really like architecture. I think some of the tourists that may be more like, I don't know, Thailand and like drinks on the beach. I mean, you can do that in the Crimea a few months a year, but I don't know. I don't think Russia really excels at that type of vacation. I'd say the more active type of holiday is what it offers.
Yeah, yeah. That segues very well into where you live. You live in a town, village. What would you classify it as? Outside of Moscow, called Chekhov.
Well,
Is
yeah.
that
Well,
right?
my official place of residence there is in the woods outside the city of Chekhov. There are 170,000 people in Chekhov County. 66 live in the main city, 66,000. So that's leaving 70, 104 people live outside the city in the sticks. So in a lot of ways, it's actually very rural if you sort of average it out. And even Chekhov, the city itself, has a very high percentage of like houses.
How big is the
It's
city? How
sort
many
of like
people?
where the rural Russia begins from leaving from Moscow going south.
Gotcha, gotcha. And you've lived in Moscow as well, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well,
And
Moscow is the
how would you
lifeblood.
compare?
Whether I
How would
like the
you
city or don't like it, that's where the money comes from. So
like?
I'm constantly in Moscow.
Yeah, but how would you compare like the speed of life and the attitude of people? Is there a significant difference, or is it more or less the same between
Mm,
Chekhov and Moscow proper?
that's a little bit of a tough one. Yeah, you know what? I could definitely say that in Chekhov, I don't know, because I know your background is you sort of grew up from Serbian parents, but like in Kuwait. Was that it?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So you might not be familiar with this, but you might. Have you ever heard of the Andy Griffith Show?
Sounds vaguely familiar, but I'm not exactly
It's
sure.
sort of like
Tell
about
me
a
more and I'll
father and a
remember.
son. a father and a son. It started in the black and white era and ended in the TV era, so it's both color and black and white. But anyways, it's about this sort of like town in North Carolina, which is sort of this like idyllic America where even sort of the problems they have, like the town drunk, he has his own keys to the prison because he misbehaves so much. When he knows he's behaving bad, he just goes into the jail by himself. Like that kind of attitude towards life. And that's kind of what Chekhov is. It's kind of actually like being in that fictitious Mayberry, North Carolina. I can even give you one example. So some people have noticed that I have a pair of police officers' boots. Well, that's because one of my neighbors is a cop and he gets too many uniforms. Like for some reason, they keep giving him more and more uniforms. So like I can even see that in summer, he'll have his like friends and cousins over and they're all in police uniform because he has so many. They're all drunk, and I think they're drunk with a chainsaw trying to like prune this tree, and they're all in police uniforms. Like that's the kind of like thing you get when you're in Chekhov as opposed to in Moscow. In Moscow, you start to, once you get over the main highway, there's a big circular highway that defines the old borders of Moscow. Now Moscow has weird borders. It's like a big circle. Hold on, I'm doing it wrong. It's like a big circle with a blob that goes not this way, this way. Okay, so it's like a weird shape, like almost like a keyhole shape. But before they added the new blob, it was basically a big circle. And the it's called the MCOD highway defines that. But once you get in the MCOD highway, things become sort of, I don't know, more in the sense of like suburban, lots of apartment buildings. The people are a little bit more boring. There's less wackiness. But then when you get into what's called the third ring, that's when you get into more liberal la la land, weird people with colorful hair, losers, freaks, infantile.
No, all of them moved to Serbia, man. All of them moved to Serbia.
Like a lot of people back to the type left. So
no, the purple haired ones. I'm saying the purple hair ones. Like they tell you Russians in Serbia, you go around and like all the Russians have purple hair and like face tattoos and so on and so forth.
Well, they felt like they had to go somewhere, or they felt like they had to make money somewhere, or whatever. So I mean, it's it is what it is.
The worst is when you hear them complaining about how Serbians smoke everywhere because we're heavy smokers, and Russians are not, so it bothers them.
Well, they used to be. They used to be 15 years ago. I'll tell you that much.
Possibly. So yeah, tell us a little bit, considering the anniversary is coming up, if you can call it an anniversary, of the beginning of the SMO. Tell us a bit about your perspective of what is going on in the Donbass, how the SMO has changed life in Russia, and then maybe how sanctions are working. Are they?
Well,
this is a comedy show, remember. This is a comedy show.
Oh, well, I don't know. Unfortunately, my friend, it's a little late in the evening and I had a pretty active day. So I don't know how many jokes would hit the mark anyways. So I'll be a little bit more serious than possibly necessary.
No, that's our disclaimer. That's just our disclaimer for the YouTube algorithm and whatnot.
Okay. Well, I can tell you that in a lot of ways, I would say that besides obviously the 14 or 15,000 Russians that have died thus far in order to protect the motherland, that's sad. But beyond their sacrifice, I think things have really improved psychologically, spiritually. I think that the country has really, the special military operation has a sort of, I don't know, maybe spiritual side or something to it where things feel like they're on the right track. As someone who works in the media, since the beginning of the Maidan, the media has really been stagnant. It has been so hard to just anything approved or anything done or make any sort of progress. Kind of when I first arrived in Russia and I first got into the media, there was so much money, so many projects, this, that, and the other. A couple of years passes, and then all of a sudden the Maidan happens and everything just goes down. And now that like new feeling of opportunities has finally returned, at least to the media. And also, I think we're going to talk about this later. Just the fact that for like the first time ever in all these years of me being here, that the state Duma is now very interested in actually trying to get people from the West to come here and move here. And it's actually concerned about immigration and the future of the country and all this is another good sign. I think a lot, that 1,100,000 people who did leave, which is a lot of people, it was kind of the bad element.
Is that the official number? I haven't heard a number.
That's what people say. Who knows? With a lot
Mm-hmm.
of things about Russia, no stats are true. It's all just you don't know. Everything is
Hearsay,
just
yeah.
information. Everything is because remember, even within Russia itself, up until the start of the special military operation, Russia never would really, in its own media, say that it's gas station masquerading as a country. But in a lot of ways, the media kind of portrayed it to be kind of like that. And then all of a
You're
sudden
saying
it
the
starts.
local Russian
Oh,
media.
look at that. We actually have tons of industry and we're not poor. Who knew?
So yeah, you're talking about the Russian media, basically. You're saying it
Yeah, the
was a little
Russian media.
more saturated with Western narratives pre-SMO, is what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah, or I should say that well, there's a few ways I could explain this. Russians are terrible, absolutely terrible at PR. So again, there's this Western thing that usually the West, when it talks about Russia, it's always some sort of projection, like in a very blunt way. So they talk about how
Mm-hmm.
repressive Russia is when it's sort of the West that's becoming the repressive ones, or they'll talk about like Russian propaganda. Russians actually suck at propaganda. They're terrible at it. Like
Yep.
Russia's terrible at PR and advertising and all that sort of stuff. It's just zero. Okay. So yeah.
The way I distinguish the West's versus the East's or Russia's propaganda is that the West will use lies to manipulate and to like force a narrative or a perception, you know, whereas
Mhm.
the East and Russia will use truth when it suits them, but they won't lie about like they won't make up blatant lies. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, that would be explained by this. This is an ancient meme. Okay, this meme comes from like the '90s, even before most people here had the internet. They said that the Communist Party lied to us, but they told us the absolute truth about capitalism. You see,
Yeah, yeah,
ah,
yeah.
and that's very much in
Yeah.
line with your theory. So
And I just want to draw attention to the fact when I met you in real life, when I passed by Moscow, one of the things that
mhm.
I was clueless about, having followed you for years before that, was your let's say how good you are with the Russian language. Like
Yeah.
you've picked it up. I'd say you're pretty fluent, if not fully fluent, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty top tier with it. I wouldn't say my pronunciation is the absolute best I've ever heard from a foreign person, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, maybe my vocabulary might be the deepest, or my ability to be a bit creative with it. Generally, most people are very bad at being creative in a foreign language. Or I've heard Russians try to write poetry in English. Like people are like big fans of it. They're really fans of English,
Yeah.
and they'll try to write poetry, and it always kind of sucks. Like it just
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have that natural flow. I don't write poetry. Okay, in fact, that's really not my thing. But puns and stuff apparently work because I was able to work on the radio and this stuff, and a lot of puns, a lot of wordplay. And apparently, I can do that. So yeah, I'm pretty on the ball with it. But I think that I've noticed that for the most part, although I have met one person who's definitely an exception to that rule recently. Besides this, like one guy, everyone I've ever met who was successful in Russia that's a foreigner had to learn speak Russian well, like 7 or 8
Yeah.
out of 10 minimum, to
Mm-hmm.
actually be able to
Mm-hmm.
do something here. Or otherwise, you're just foreign guy and you're probably going to be teaching English to the day you die. I have met people who love teaching English, so for them, fine. But if you
Yeah.
don't love it, oh boy, that's like issue number one is learning how to speak it, or else you're just so you can't do anything in society. You're just an outsider and you can't get anything done.
As they would say, это нормально, right?
Yeah, something like that. Это нормально.
Moving right along, or actually going a little bit back because you skipped one of the questions.
Sure.
Sanctions. How do you think they affected your life? And I mean, other than the money issue,
Yeah,
not being
well,
able to
it
receive
affected
money
my
from
life. And
abroad.
well, first off, most people around me, we were pretty sure that it was going to be tough times ahead, but not in a way like, oh, this is awful, overthrow Putin. People were just kind of like, well, better stock. Like for example, I actually stocked up on shampoo. I heard that there was going to be basically the end of shampoo. Apparently, shampoo is made in Russia. No matter what it says on the bottle, the factories are here. So shampoo is not an issue. Okay, I bought 3 bottles at one time, for no reason apparently. Okay, so that was
Yeah.
my little weird paranoia. Why I picked shampoo, I don't know. Probably because there's something that's, I forget, like there's Unilever and Johnson and Johnson, or all the companies that at least used to make it, but whatever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, anyways, so there was a little bit of a worry that there would be scarcities of some things, but generally people are like, well, it's the people that wanted this, not that they wanted to have a war in general. Of course, the Russian people don't want to go to war, but they wanted a solution to the Ukrainian crisis that already happened, So they've been waiting for this for a long time. So in a lot of ways, people weren't exactly, how should I put it, displeased with the fact that things they got hot. You know what I mean? Now about sanctions, how they
wait, when you bring up the mood of the people, these people that wanted something done about the Ukraine issue or problem or whatever, the Donbass and the Nazis in Ukraine, what percentage of the Russian population do you think that is? Like, who were aware of it beforehand and were, let's say, cheering on some kind of
one thing,
more
dude, I
serious
can tell you
reaction?
about who is aware of it. Like I try to tell people, in the United States over the last 10 years, we've had a bunch of things. We've had like Ferguson riots, and then we had riots in Oregon, and we've had this Chinese balloon, and we've had the early phase of the war in Ukraine. We've had stuff to do with Ruth Bader Ginsburg dying, and then the abortion thing. See, there's been these sort of like flashpoint moments in the news where one topic really is like the strong topic. In Russia, since 2014, the Ukrainian crisis is always number one, always. So for basically 10 years, issue number one has been this crisis. And therefore, everyone who isn't like some sort of, what would you call them? Like a tribal person, like a tribal Eskimo, besides them, everyone knows about all this.
So see, I didn't know that. I didn't know it was such a like mainstream topic on Russian news. So you're saying basically on every news broadcast for the last 8 years there was
it was always issue number one, blinding in a lot of ways everything else. Now another thing about this is, okay, so this is constantly on the news. They show the people who were burnt to death in the buildings in Odessa on May 2nd, 2014. So they started with that. Then how the tanks rolled in for the anti-terrorist operation against the people of the Donbass, essentially a genocide to go in there and just kill all the locals, this, that, and the other. And of course, you watch on Russian TV, and the natural then reaction is, okay, they're doing this to essentially us. That these people there are an extension of us, and okay, they're murdering us now, and then finally, about 1 year ago to this day that we're speaking, the end came to be. And so in a lot of ways, the population asked for this.
And the question is, okay, it's the narrative. Okay, it's been going on in the news. But like of the people watching the news, which I'd say is like generally 40, 50, 60% maybe of the total population, of them, how many do you think had the same feelings as you do, as normal people do?
Well, judging
about
by
what
the
needs to be done.
ratings of President Putin's policies, 80%.
So you'd say 80% basically. So there's about 10% that are still lingering in Russia, not able to like
the thing is,
leave.
The thing is, those people left. I'm talking about sort of like when the war started, of the people who were in Russia.
Yeah.
I would say it would be sort of like 80 who are for the war because it was righteous, 10% who are against it because of like things like, oh no, but I have business in Dubai, my life is going to be over. Basically, that not a certain level of maybe selfishness, or they were pretty sure that Russia would lose. So it's not so much that they're like, we're evil, we're against Russia. It's more just like, this is going to blow up in our faces, or it's going to destroy my life. There's that 10%. And then maybe that's even more 15%, to be honest. Then you always get into like the legendary epic 2% of the Russian population, which probably is less now, that is hardcore liberal. There's always 2% of them, just enough to be annoying. And of course, they're all against they've been against this, from the war. They were completely silent for 8 years of watching Russians be massacred for their ethnicity in the Donbass. But as soon as the war started to save them, нет войне, as in no to war.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No comment. What can I say? Sounds very Soros funded. In any
It is
case,
Sorosian in its own
yeah,
manner, if that's the proper adjective.
yeah.
So,
I didn't know they'd already made it into an adjective. Um,
who knows?
Considering you already mentioned your visit to the Duma,
Yeah.
could you tell us what the Duma is? This is the state Duma, the city Duma?
Oh yeah, the state Duma is like the lower house of parliament. It's essentially the factory
Okay.
where new laws come from, which is very similar to a lot of countries. And that's one of those other things where I doubt your viewers think this, but I'll just say it because still sometimes I hear that people think that Russia's kind of communist or something. It's not. Like the overall skeleton of Russia's legal system is very much a mimicry of the West, with
Mm-hmm.
more power stacked in the presidency, and that's about it. So it's kind of just that. And yeah, it was a very moment of optimism for me, and it was my sort of first chance to actually go to the Duma and really be able to uh, talk about any topic seriously, but this is one close to my heart, which is immigration, because essentially the Russian immigration system as it stands today only
Mm-hmm.
allows two types of people to come to Russia. People who already have a direct connection to Russia, being they're already married to a Russian person, they already have a kid with Russian citizenship by some weird twist of fate, and they don't,
Mm-hmm.
or they were born in the USSRs and before 1991, and they want to go back home. Those people can apply for a temporary residency permit under at any time they like. Okay, no guarantee they'll get in, but they can apply. And also people who are willing to invest like over $220,000 at the very least into the economy can sort of buy their way into being able to apply. So that's like the 1% or 1/10 1%. I don't know what percent of the global population can just put over $200,000 on the table on a whim and be done with it and not worry about it. But anyways, that's essentially the only people who can enter in the Russian system. So I've been contacted by hundreds, if not thousands of people over the last few years as I've become sort of more quietly famous about moving to Russia and how to do it. And the short answer is you really can't. I mean, that's the reality of it. And I don't know if that serves Russia's interests. So one of the things I mentioned is it's like, okay, if we want to live in a society that's closed off and we don't have immigration, that's fine. A lot of the things that Russia does with immigration that keep it kind of difficult, I actually kind of think are good. But at this point in time, when the West is falling apart, and I've heard so many complaints from Russians about how awful it was when they stole all the smart people because of the Russian Revolution. And then in the 90s, they stole all our smart people. Well, it's time to steal them back. It's time to steal them back. Dude, I know people in the Ivy League who they used to use fake Facebook accounts to communicate with other people. Now they're so scared because it's connected to your phone. They just don't use social media at all. They can't express any of their ideas, but they work in the Ivy League.
Yeah.
That's the exact kind of person who wants to come to Russia. Because trust me, my friends, if you are pro-Trump or anti-abortion or whatever, or you like your occasional meme that pokes a little fun at people who don't quite look like yourself, well, Russia's a fantastic place to be.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about all that stuff, but all I can say personally, I've never felt safer than I did walking around Moscow. Like that may have been like
Yeah.
subjective, but realistically, I don't think so. And cleaner. Like it's pretty clean in Moscow. I can
Well, a
say
lot of
that.
people clean up, but also I think the attitude's changed. Like people's just attitude towards everything here changed. Like the Putin really his job, I think his main job was to kill the 90s. And because in the
Hmm.
90s things were just I was here in the 90s, but in the early 2000s or whatever, things were pretty darn messy and that they had a little bit of that more urban grunge. And it's kind of gone away. I think people have become more respectful or more appreciative. Just the attitude is changing in the right direction. So, but also in terms of crime, not a lot of crime. There was in the 90s though, and boy, will Russian immigrants who like left in the 90s, they'll sure tell you about all that crime because I've the rental property where the kids are at is around an area called Kuzminki. That's a fun word to say. And I've told people who are like Russian emigres, I believe that's the better term, about that. They're like, how could you have your children there? They'll be killed by knife-wielding madmen. And like, no. In all the years that they lived at that rental apartment, one person got killed in the park over 10 years. So one person did get somehow killed, but
less than
that's
Chicago, I'd say.
yeah, they're in Chicago. So all I see are like women with baby carriages at night, to be honest.
Yeah.
The worst you see in Russia is maybe some on occasion public drunkenness. That's probably the most thing that might be off-putting to people, but not nearly as much as the stereotype about Russian drinking would make you think.
Yeah. Let's go to the topic of the day, so to speak, which is Putin's speech, which happened, when was it? Before yesterday? Yesterday?
Oh my gosh, I don't even remember. That would be.
It's been a busy few days for me as well.
When did I go? Because I had a
it doesn't
meeting
matter. Let's
during.
leave it a mystery. Let's leave it as a mystery,
Sure,
so
dude.
people don't know when we recorded it. So people don't know when we recorded
it. I'm doing stuff. All I remember is I had a meeting during it, and the funny part is right after that meeting, like the guy was because he wanted to listen to Putin's speech. So I won't mention anything about this guy, but an important guy. We'll call him just important. So this is for Russia. So anyways, he's like, look, man, I've been listening to Putin's speech. Thank you for waiting for me to finish listening to this. I had like a meeting with some of his colleagues that sort of ended, and he was like, listen. He listened to more or less the end. He's like, look, let me take you out to lunch. I feel bad for making you sit for 20 minutes. I was like, cool. So this is Russia. And so we start talking about the business and our plannings and all this stuff. And he's like, hey, how about we do a round of shots? And so it begins. And so that's what I sort of on a personal level remember about Putin's speech. It made this sort of business partner of mine in a way feel guilty and start buying shots. I've actually tried to kind of give up drinking, but unfortunately, it's like that the was it The Godfather? You try to get out, they always pull you back in. So
yeah.
About Putin's speech itself,
yeah, tell us what you expected from Putin's speech, from all the like Western and Eastern, let's say, propaganda and expectations of all the blogosphere, and then tell us what was actually said that you think is most relevant.
From the blogosphere, everyone always thinks that Putin is going to do something brash or brazen or big, and with the exception now of the February 24th, 2022, the beginning of the special military operation.
I'm in awe at your control of dates. I can't remember any date.
Well, that one.
You're like a master.
Well, about that particular date, I am. Into the history of other countries, it's not so good. But we remember that specific moment where Putin, he came on and he laid out the reasons of why the special military operation is happening, this, that, and the other. That was something bold. That was about bold action, was going to make a big change in life. That was something, big. Okay. Besides that, he never has. Putin is very incremental, very, I think he's afraid of breaking the Overton window. So he likes just gently nudge the Overton window. So in some ways, people were like, this speech was very fiery. But you can see the language he used it's only starting to get kind of fiery now. It's very slowly changing as the Overton window moves. So a lot of people are predicting there'd be a general mobilization that they're going to draft everyone, which would be stupid. That would essentially be Russia deciding to lose the war because drafting everyone and mobilizing the entire economy probably actually would break Russia and its economy, if that makes sense. So that would be the worst possible thing to do. So everyone who pushed that theory or believed in it, guys, you have to. I do not have a degree in economics. I'm not an economics genius, but I think even someone with a basic knowledge of the way that money works should know that would be a stupid move, and that wasn't going to happen. And also based on Putin's track record of being kind of boring. Again, there's this projection that comes from the West that people always think that somehow Stalin was really like loud and angry, like Hitler was. But if you notice, they show a lot of Hitler speeches to show how angry he was, but there aren't really a lot of angry Stalin speeches that they use for stock footage. Why? Because he didn't talk that way. And it's also with Putin. Putin tends to speak very clearly, calmly, and very decisively. Sometimes, like if he was speaking English, sometimes we have to say that the Western powers have gone too far, that they have become exploitive of the globe, and this can no longer be tolerated. This exploitation of the global South has to come to an end, and the actions that they have done in Libya, in Syria, in Iraq, and now in Ukraine are proof that they are living in unacceptable. That's how he talks. Like, if you understand Russian,
Yugoslavia too. Everybody forgets Yugoslavia. Putin never forgets Yugoslavia. Neither does Lavrov. But Yugoslavia too. Yeah. The point is, he's a lawyer, isn't he, Putin?
Well, yeah, that's what his legal background is. But again, like, part of Russian culture is really not to be emotional. Like, as someone who plays pro-American football in Russia as well, I can tell you one thing is that the big difference between the game is not so much in the rules, but in Russia, there's dead silence. Only the quarterback speaks. You're not supposed to ever speak when you're on the field. So you know what I mean?
So you're saying like, there's like a hierarchical structure that's like unseen, basically.
Well, yeah, or two, like I have one of our American teammates who left Russia and came back, but unfortunately he has to work nights, so he can't play, which sucks. We need him. He's a really good cornerback, but he always is like, man, I miss trash talking and stuff, and no one does that here. I'm like, to be honest, I don't miss trash talking. I like the pure silence of just, you're lined up against the defensive line, you're looking them in the eyes, nothing. They don't say one word to you. You also have to physically hand the ball to the referee. Like, you're not supposed to, like, throw it or really. You can spike it, but then you're expected to pick it up afterwards.
So basically, it's like a politer version. Let's put it that way.
Yeah,
of American football.
And so if you think about it that way, like, that's why Putin is very reflective of that sort of Russian stoic, let's be calm, or maybe we can be a little excited, but let's not be crazy excited, or how, like, because Moscow is infiltrated by liberals. For example, on some of the trains, they want to enforce a quiet wagon, like a quiet train car that's supposed to be quiet, and they're all quiet because everyone in Russia knows to shut up. Like, a big part of Russian society is, how about you shut up? And not so much in like a political sense, like, how dare you speak against our glorious leader? Just in general, keep your yap shut. There's no reason to be loud.
To be yapping around. That's a good word. Yeah, like they're frugal with their words, in the sense that they use them when they need to, and they don't just blab around.
Yeah, and also one thing is, maybe you hear it a little bit, me and other people, but also Russians are not great orators. That is a rare thing, not a common thing. I think the American educational system makes much better people for speaking and sort of speaking, advertising, promoting ideas. The Russian system is a little bit more technical, or I don't know, I don't quite know how to put it. But anyways, Putin is very much a reflection of Russian society in that way, that he's not like bombastic. He's not like Trump. He doesn't have like big he never has an emotional reaction to anything. Like, oh my God, I forget when he was really, really angry at one particular, I forget what it was. I think it had to do with like some factory failing that the government invested something. But like, I think at the most, he like slammed a pen once on the table. You know what I mean? Like, for him, that was, I'll kill you, pen, So it's just a different.
Oh, I think I know. It was like an internal meeting, and there was a guy that was answering his questions on camera, on video, and he didn't answer correctly, or like he answered something that he shouldn't have. I think I know the scene that you're talking about. Like that.
Or one time, I think he got angry at someone, and he was like they didn't sign some sort of like anti-corruption document, and the one guy's like, sort of like, by the way, I noticed you didn't sign. Well, no, because that's American. Hold on. I noticed that you didn't sign the anti-corruption document. Please be so kind to sign it right now.
I'm
waiting.
Yeah, that's what it was.
You have to kind of like lower the emotion, increase the sort of like authoritative kind of tone. So again, he has a very different way of doing things. But if I always tell people, if Putin could speak English and he could talk about guns and taxes, which he never does in Russian, he would be the ultimate Republican. They'd love him. Oh my God, he's so business, he's so serious, but he doesn't like to talk about guns and taxes ever.
Yeah. Okay, so biggest takeaways from the speech as let's say a foreigner living in Russia who's now you're Russian now, right? You got a passport.
Yeah, I have a Russian passport. Yeah.
Yeah, so you're let's say what do they call them? Naturalized Russian. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, naturalized citizen. So anyway, the big takeaways are that thankfully nothing is major is going to change. There were like no big revelations. He just kind of essentially, reaffirmed why Russia's doing this. He reaffirmed the sort of treacherous nature of the West. I guess he also wanted to make it again remind the public that he mentioned how Merkel admitted that the Minsk Accords were just to buy time. And so,
Mm-hmm.
he sort of just underlined a lot of the actions of the West and how they've sort of created the situation that it's a mess that Russia has to clean up. But if there was anything about some sort of major policy or plan shifting, nah, I didn't hear it. It was your sort of typical, maybe post, oh my gosh, maybe at some point after Trump euphoria wore down and people sort of realized that Trump wasn't really going to radically change U.S.-Russian relations. That's when we have pessimistic Putin comes out, and pessimistic
Mm-hmm.
Putin is just sort of like, well, you guys are our enemy because you want to be for some reason, and there's nothing I can do about it. So you're the enemy now. We'll deal with this and going forward. And so that's kind of what it was. I mean, it's just sort of a little bit of a speech where you're kind of beating the patriotic drum and sort of reaffirming why we're doing stuff. But again, I didn't really hear much by way of any sort of planning or ideas that he hasn't mentioned before. Anytime Putin goes up, he always remembers, remember, we're in the process of increasing social programs. I think people like the idea of social programs just as a vague word. I think that resonates
Mm-hmm.
with people because it means stuff for the government for free. Well, for free in quotes.
Yeah.
So I think there was some social program talk there. Oh, he did mention that they're going to take care of the dead soldiers. That everyone, the soldier that dies, their family's going to
Mm-hmm.
be taken care of. That was something it's not news, but it's definitely something that was good to say to the public.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
That's about it. Kind of a
So.
boring speech, to be honest. I'm not. One thing I just although Putin is our national hero here, and I have a great respect
Mm-hmm.
for him. He's the leader. He gave me citizenship, by the way. It was from his pen stroke, so I'm very grateful to him in that way. But I'm not like one of the. I'm a Russophile, not a Putinophile. Like I don't
Yeah.
wake up in the morning like There's some Western foreigners who talk about politics, and they're just like, oh my god, it's Putin. I woke up
Mm-hmm.
and I looked. Muslims pray to Mecca. They prayed to the portrait of Putin on the wall. And
Yeah.
yes, he's a great leader. He actually probably is the greatest leader of our time, of our lifetimes. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, he's someone who's worthy of praise, but he's not worthy of worship. You know,
Yeah.
and I think sometimes people can go too far, and they start to also put these like messianic and what would you want to call it, like they build a cult of personality around him, when in a lot of ways
Mm-hmm.
Putin himself, much like George Washington, has been trying specifically to sort of not build a cult of personality around himself.
Yeah.
Despite what
Yeah.
the West says, they always say he's this egomaniac, when in reality, he really isn't. I mean, there's no Putin books. He's not on the money. There will be a Putin center after he's not president anymore, just because that's the way the laws work.
Mm-hmm.
But so there's like no Putin center. There is a Putin street somewhere in Chechnya, but that's because the powers that be in Chechnya wanted it. So
Mm-hmm.
there isn't this like egomaniacal. I guess there's the thing of he takes his shirt off, rides a horse, but I think that's more of his PR people trying to make him look like great leader. But he
Yeah.
doesn't have. He's surprisingly, and maybe this is his best quality, surprisingly not narcissistic at all.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying your admiration for him basically comes from what he has done for Russia as a Russian and as a leader, as opposed to him just because of who he is. You're primarily like in love with Russia, and because he has helped Russia, you appreciate him, as opposed
Well,
to worshiping whatever he says.
maybe let me put it this way. I think of the Russophile club, there's this certain branch that, like I said, they're sort of obsessed with Putin, and I think that their real love is for Putin. Like I mentioned about, I was kind of joking about the taxes, although that would be true. I do think that to some extent, kind of wish that he was a Republican American citizen, and they really like him. I don't know if they really like Russia, and especially when you get into the Russophiles who haven't really lived in Russia, they tend to kind of put the horse before the wagon before the horse when it comes to Putin, because they seem to think that like he's the greatness, where I think Putin himself would say that he's more this person responsible for using the already greatness of Russia. It's kind of like oh my god, I think a good example would be like, the Prophet Muhammad never said that he was divine. He was divinely inspired. God is great. He just happened to be the person that God chose. And I think of it sort of that way. And that's why Muslims tend not to not really like praying to saints and things like that. They're kind of praying specifically, they're making sure that worship goes specifically to God, but a ton of respect goes to the Prophet Muhammad. That's kind of how I see it. And I think in some ways, there's a certain branch of Russophiles that have it the opposite. They're obsessed with the messenger. They're like, for them, the Prophet Muhammad was just so everything that the who cares? We have to
Figuratively
just make
speaking, of
idols
course.
and
Yeah, yeah,
worship
yeah.
him, something like
Yeah, yeah.
that.
Figuratively speaking, like comparing the two, just to
Figuratively, of
not.
course,
Yeah, yeah,
not literally. The
yeah, yeah.
Russophiles tend to not be Muslim in general.
What?
I mean,
Considering you
foreigner
bring it
Russophile.
up, what is let's say is there any sour taste left over in the Russian psyche, the general Russian psyche, about Chechnya and its
Mm,
rebranding?
for trolls online, there sure are. For people who want to create disunity in Russian society. But remember,
No, no, but I'm
Russians are very
saying
forgiving.
generally from the people that you hang
No,
around, that you
not
know, and
really.
so on. Is there
Well,
animosity
I could
or?
no, because like even when we filmed the video when we went to Chechnya, like we talked to
Hmm.
the locals there, and they said that they were like, "Well, the 10% came back." I was like, "Wait, what are you talking about? The 10%?" They're like, "Well, 10% of Chechnya was always non-Chechens, and they've all come back." So
Hmm.
for them, that's kind of a good sign. Like there's a Russian Orthodox Church that's in Grozny, and they say that the non-Chechen people, the sort of the amount, like they were old enough to remember sort of before the war, and they sort of feel that things have kind of gone back, like demographics wise, to kind of what they were. Russians, like I'm trying to say, Russians are extremely forgiving. Like after World War II, a lot of the Germans who were captured were sort of forced to work like slaves for about 5 years. What did the Russians do? They just let them go. Like a lot of these guys just let go to find wives and start their lives
Hmm.
over again. It's crazy. Like,
Yeah.
especially I believe the mills in Chiripavets, which is way north of here, were
Hmm.
made pretty much all by German slave labor. Then they just let them go, and then they just paid them to work at the factories and have wives and kids, and that was normal. Russians are extremely forgiving, extremely well, part of Russian culture also is you always accept defeat. Now, this is one where probably some trolls are gonna fight me on this, and I'm not a historian, but generally Russian history sort of shows. Well, again, history shows a lot of things because a lot of people write a lot of history books, but mainstream Russian history shows that like Ivan the terrible Ivan the Fourth was actually a more merciful leader than you'd think. Where so in the city of like Novgorod Veliki, so not Nizhny Novgorod, the other one, Novgorod Veliki. It's very famous that like on one of the monuments that shows all of Russian history, they didn't put Ivan the Fourth because he was responsible for essentially murdering their elite and replacing them with the Moscow elite for being disloyal. But I also have to remember in the history that he was this leader in the Middle Ages, and he sensed a lot of disloyalty for a region, and he specifically found out and only targeted to kill the people he knew were actually against him.
Hmm.
If you look at like sort of like kind of medieval leader logic, that's fairly humane. Also, going back to Ivan the Fourth, when he conquered the Tatars and took over Kazan, well, what did he do? He accepted their surrender, and he built a cathedral. right next to the mosque inside the Kremlin. Well, they built the Kremlin and all that. There's a mosque inside it too, which is a symbol of the Russian idea that, inside this Kremlin also is a church. We also have a mosque. That's what the locals believe in. Didn't touch their religion, didn't touch their culture, just let it go. And those sort of things that apparently the Russians inherited from the Mongols were pretty brutal. But if you played ball, were pretty not brutal. That's sort of kind of how Russian society works. And if you surrender, they'll accept it. In fact, it applies to the West. After all the stuff the West has done to them, I wouldn't be surprised if the West surrendered. They'd be like, okay, we'll accept it.
I was just gonna pivot to that, considering you're talking about surrender. Would they? Because like, there's talk of negotiations every month or so, and the like both sides are saying the other should surrender,
Yeah.
and Moscow's gonna fall any day now. Tell us what you think. Do you think they actually would, and what would be the terms of the surrender? Would it be like an unconditional surrender?
There's this sort of growing. Well, we'll talk about the terms in a moment. There's this growing. I think it's a bit of maybe more of a myth than truth that that Zelensky actually wanted to surrender, but the West wouldn't let him. I don't think that that's necessarily true, because that really implies that Zelensky actually really is a leader. And we can't play intellectual like volleyball where sometimes Zelensky is the leader and then sometimes he's a puppet. I think he's always been a puppet. And it doesn't make sense that in the beginning of the war, Zelensky had this autonomy to kind of negotiate with the Russians, but then Biden's team drug him back. Or, by Biden's team, it could be the deep state.
They drug him back, indeed.
Yeah, or drugged him back, yes. So I'm not sure that that's necessarily true. But now about the negotiations, again, the Washington politicians say a lot, but if we want to look at this from a certain strategic lens, okay.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just say that you're someone in the Pentagon and you know that the United States cannot surrender. Like we can't surrender from the PR side of things. We're in too deep. We also can't surrender because whoever suggests, surrendering might get fired. So we kind of have to ride this thing out to the end. But I think ultimately, when you look at this, maybe a very Kissinger way of looking at this, or maybe even more, I think maybe this would be the sort of Kissinger spirit of things is, to an extent, Washington can at least say that they got a lot of Slavic people to die. And ultimately, that's really what a lot of their mission was. So in some way, even when Kiev eventually surrenders, the deaths of Slavs is always in Washington's interest. Well, the way Washington functions as of the Cold War.
I think you mean Albion.
Oh, dude, we could get into this. I'm not a big fan of discussing who's the secret power behind what's happening. All I can tell you is
I know.
I've
seen some of the shares on your Telegram channel, and they're not YouTube friendly. Let's put them that way.
A lot of times. Well, I have a good little team of I guess super supporters who kind of feed me information, and I think some of these guys believe that there's that sometimes lean a little bit towards the London.
Beep. We can't talk about
some lean towards London. Thankfully, none of the guys lean towards the Vatican. Some guys lean towards the motherland of the Abrahamic religions.
There's a lot of conspiracy theories. If nothing else, they provide good material for jokes, which is what this whole channel is about.
Again, no,
Keeping on the subject of jokes. Keeping on the subject of jokes. I just got to do this because I'm never gonna use this footage if I don't use it now.
Okay. What did I do?
This is you and me in Moscow when we met, and we had a little just so I can show that I actually did meet Tim, and Tim is a lot bigger in person than he appears on camera. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. I actually got this message from a random girl the other day, and she was like, "Oh my God, you're so cute, but how tall are you?" I was like 185 centimeters at 6'1". She was like, "Wow, I thought you were 160." It's like, what? No, actually, I'm in the golden 14% of men that's over 6 foot tall. So I'm in the golden 14, baby. I'm a big guy. I'm an offensive line for crying out loud.
But
So
you're also there. Like you play American football for a reason. You're not
yeah,
you're
yeah, yeah.
not you're not
Well,
a
I'm built
leaf.
up,
Let's
man.
put it that way.
I've been doing it at least 2 times a week for years now, and it really even people who don't for all say like my bone and muscle structure has changed because of it. So yeah, you get real built up real quick, but you got to stick with it. You also have to try to not get hurt. That's on the one hand, it really builds you up, but it can break you down real quick if you do stuff the wrong way.
So yeah, this interview, what I was getting at has been in the making since November of last year, basically. But we
No.
finally got a chance to talk to Tim. Tim, it's been an honor and a pleasure to have you on. It's been a really good
All right.
talk. Is there
Good to
anything you
talk to you.
want to say to our subscribers, our
Well,
viewers,
I'll tell you
before
one
you
thing.
head out?
If you stayed here this long and you're subscribed to Working Brother on Telegram, then you got to look for Tim Kirby Russia Hardcore or Tim Kirby
Definitely.
Hardcore or something. Look for me. You'll see the group and join up for my Telegram, and you may find you'll find a combination of my thoughts that you've heard today, lots of interesting news, lots of memes. I love me some Russian memes, and I think it's important because they memes carry a lot of culture with them. And I'm talking about taking memes from the Russian internet and showing them to you, the memes you
Yeah.
haven't seen. Okay, so it's something
Yeah.
interesting. I think it's a window into culture. Maybe people disagree, but whatever. It's my channel. Haha. And you can find me if you're looking for Tim Kirby on YouTube or Rumble or BitChute. You will find videos. If you're looking for my travel videos, especially on Rumble, but it's on YouTube again. The old name of it was RTTT, Russia Tips, Tricks, and Travels. I believe the new YouTube that is under my control is called Tim Kirby's Travels. So you can find that, and you can subscribe, and you can watch me go around Russia. Also on Rumble is This Old Russian House. That's about how I fixed my house in the woods and made it go from a shed or shack from the 1990s into an all year round livable environment with artisan water and heating and a shower and a toilet that functions to this day.
Excellent. Maybe next time we can get into the village that you plan on
Oh
making. Two
yeah.
villages,
Oh yeah. We can
American
get into that.
villages in Russia. But I think we've had enough for today. It's been almost an hour. Let's take it out with some music. Thank you, Tim, Kirby, Russia,
All right. I'm out, man.
maybe hardcore. It's been great. Here's some music to take us out. Everyone, speak later.